Elon Musk talked about what he thinks about whether the moon landing was fake or not. Also, whether you believe in this conspiracy or not, you should acknowledge that people who doubt the moon landing, they really have legitimate questions about the 1969 moon landing, and answering these questions is not easy. However, today we will show you stunning proof and details that will change your perception about this controversial question. With that, Elon Musk brought one ultimate argument that should end this debate on moon landing conspiracy once and for all. First of all, what does Elon Musk have an answer to those who believe it was an elaborate hoax? More importantly, does evidence back those answers up? Well, let's first look at what Musk has said about the moon landing. In short, when he sat down with an interview with Babylon Bee, he called the 1969 moon landing a great thing for all of humanity. When the interviewer interjects with the concept of people not believing it truly happened, Musk had this to say: "We went to the moon not once but several times, and I think the Russians would have called us out on that one if it wasn't true." Musk has also on other occasions made fun of those who believe that the moon landing was a hoax, sending a tweet out in 2011 sarcastically saying, "If you ever wanted to know the real truth about the moon landings, best Onion article ever." So clearly, Musk has full belief we landed on the moon, to the point of mocking those who do not by retweeting parody articles with sarcastic captions. But why do others think it was faked? To look at the other side for a moment, we can name some of the recurring reasons for people to believe that the moon landing was faked, and then discuss counterpoints to those reasons. But first, we need to emphasize that what Musk said about Russians calling us out is an incredibly tough argument that should be explored from a different angle. For example, one of the most prominent arguments for the moon landing being faked was the fact that the Soviet space program launched Luna 2 to the moon by 1959, which many believe was the main trigger for the space race between the USA and Russia at the time. If there was footage of American astronauts walking on the moon, then the US would be crowned the winner in this race, which is why they would fake it. Except here's the problem with that theory. Since the moon landing in 1969, the Soviet space program has had 23 successful completed missions to the moon. And considering that America is their longtime rivals, there would be a couple of Russian cosmonauts who would have something to say about the lack of American flags on the surface of the moon if there was no evidence of Americans there, considering that, according to this theory at least, this entire facade was made to fool the Russians. They would be the quickest and happiest to jump on the fact that the moon landing was fake if there was no evidence man had walked on the moon. Their silence is almost certainly its own evidence, as Musk claims. But Russia isn't the only country who could spill the beans, as the list of countries which have also had successful missions to the moon include China, Japan, the European Union, and India. The European Space Agency reported in 2009 that Australian, Spanish, and English scientists independently picked up the moon landing signals from space as well. That's a lot of people outside of NASA who could have disproven America's claims. Oh, and that's not to mention the 400,000 people inside NASA who worked on the Apollo mission as well, who could have slipped up and ruined the hoax by now. Adding to this, thanks to a reflector module that Buzz Aldrin left on the surface of the moon, if you had a powerful enough laser, you could bounce it off the moon yourself. Another popular theory is that the flag was waving when it couldn't have been, seeing as there is no atmosphere on the moon. The simple answer to this one is that it wasn't blowing. The astronauts rammed the pole into the ground, and seeing as there is much less form of gravity, like the astronauts themselves, what goes up takes longer to go down on the moon, which makes it look like it is blowing in the picture. That and the fact that it is being held up by a bar at the top, considering there is no wind to make it fly on the moon. In fact, when you think about it, if it was filmed in a studio, it must have been a gustier studio than most in order to get the flag that shape. Another criticism of the photographs were that there were no stars in the background of them. Surely there would be stars out on the moon. Well, none of those photos were taken during the day, which they were. Like how the sun blocks out the light of the stars during the day on our planet with added blue thanks to our atmosphere. The moon does the same thing, and the stars can't be seen when the sun is out. Yet another argument often made is that the pictures are too flawless and too beautiful, and this one is also simple. Some photographs NASA took were blurred to heck and back. Why would they release the bad-looking photos of their proudest mission? According to some sources, there are 160 color and 200 black and white photos taken of the astronauts by a specially developed camera, modified so the film would work on the moon's surface. The fact that we keep seeing only a few photos over and over again shows how hard they work to get those fabulous shots. The last theory that some use to complain that the shadows in the photograph apparently do not run parallel to each other. But despite how often this one is brought up, it is simply not true. The shadows on the pictures from the moon appear as if they are converging. but it is the same for any parallel lines when photographed. Think about a pair of railway tracks going off into the distance. Even if it seems like they might be coming together, we know it is just a trick of perspective. Besides, when shadows move away from a person on a spotlight, they diverge. So the only way to have gotten that effect in a studio would be an entire wall of laser lighting, so that the shadows were parallel. According to Mark Shubin, video forensic analyst and production technical advisor speaking for True TV, in the 60s, the only kind of laser lighting practically available for studios was red, which would have made for quite a different looking photo. So why are people so ready to believe it was fake to begin with? Well, to answer that question, it may be linked to a simple book published in 1976 by Bill Kaysing. The title of this book, We Never Went to the Moon. The problem here is that whilst the book was a rip-roaring success, Kaysing was no kind of technician or scientist or engineer. Generally, he wrote about cooking and agriculture before this piece, and despite having no real experience in the field, Kaysing wrote his book anyway, and he even defended it on TV against Dr. Rick Feinberg, a press officer at the American Astronomical Society. It is from here that we see many of the common counter-arguments to man walking on the moon, from this one single book. But why are people so ready to believe a book written by an author who was famous for cookery only before that point? The answer is that the Americans had no faith in their government due to two main breaks of trust: the Pentagon Papers and Watergate. In brief, the Pentagon Papers revealed information about the Vietnam War America was in, detailing how brutal and unnecessary America's actions were, and how the war was essentially unwinnable as America was actively sending more troops in. And Watergate revealed multiple abuses of power by the Nixon administration. With those two scandals fresh in their minds, it does make a strange amount of sense for Americans to be unwilling to trust such a large and outlandish claim. But at the end of the day, it's not only the American government saying it, it's multiple governments, some of which actively despise America, and 400,000 scientists, engineers, and technicians, most of whom are likely more interested in science than patriotism. So, to conclude, as Musk said, yes, if the moon landing was fake, the Russians would have called that out a long time ago. Don't forget to subscribe.